day I was thinking about what financial advice I would want to give to my daughter. And after thinking about it for a little bit, I came to the conclusion that I wouldn't give her any financial advice. Instead, the advice I'd give her would be more life advice, maybe more in terms of expectation setting. And the 3 pieces of advice I would give to my daughter would be, you need to be able to support yourself. You need to be able to live on your own. Number 2, you need to be able to love yourself. And number 3, you need to do something to bring joy to the world. Now those can be 3 pretty big and lofty goals, so I'm going to break them down a little bit. But if I was to say them in a nutshell, those 3 goals, I would rephrase them as work hard, be nice, and smile. Okay, the first goal, being able to support yourself. Being able to support yourself is really all about agency. Being able to make your own choices about where you live, where you spend your time, what you do. You need to be able to make money, have your own place to live, be able to get all the things that you need so that you can do what you want to do. If you're not able to support yourself, you really don't have agency anymore. Your choices are taken away from you. And so that's why being able to support yourself is probably that first step on being an adult. And as a parent, I think it's important just to clarify that. Now, it may seem like a really basic goal and really easy to achieve, but honestly, that's what we're looking for out of our kids, is just to grow up and for them to start making decisions on their own. And sometimes, as kids, it can be really hard to understand what your parents are expecting from you. And when you look at your parents, sometimes you can imagine, as a kiddo, these huge goals that you have to accomplish just to be at or near what your parents have accomplished. But I think most parents just want their kids to be able to make their own choices and be able to live on their own. I think that's why being able to support yourself and being able to live on your own is a first goal, a first important expectation to set. The second goal is being able to love yourself. Well, what the heck does that mean? The way I think about it is there's 3 separate actions that you can take and you'll be doing really well at loving yourself. And those 3 actions are, first part is being mindful of your own thoughts and feelings, and even progressing that mindfulness to the point where you accept your full range of emotions. The second part of that is being able to grow yourself and also to protect yourself. And I'll break down that a little bit more because that's a little bit nebulous. And the last thing is being able to prioritize your needs over your wants. So looking at the first one, being mindful, and then being able to experience your full range of emotions. This may sound pretty basic, but it's actually pretty hard. All the time we have emotions and then we react to those emotions instead of us actually experiencing our emotions, understanding what we're experiencing, and then maybe taking more positive actions later on. Oftentimes we feel emotions and we react to them. We feel angry, we start to yell. We feel attacked and we start to act defensively. And a lot of times these emotions will bring up that fight response, right, in us human beings. And so really being able to understand that you have feelings and then understand what those feelings are and letting yourself experience them, I think will make you just a better person. It'll make you less guarded, but it'll also make you a more genuine person. And it will also make you, I think, a happier person because I think you're able to live with more intent. Second part, being able to protect yourself and grow yourself. There's a couple parts here. First is setting boundaries. You have to set boundaries both on the good stuff and the bad stuff. If you get a lot out of reading, if you're developing new skills from reading and you enjoy reading, then set aside time for reading. How much are you going to read every day, every week, every month? Set aside some time for that, make some space for that, set some goals for it, and try to go and do it. But you also need to set boundaries on bad stuff too. If there's people in your life that are bringing you down, that lead you to taking on negative behaviors or risky behavior, you want to set boundaries on that and not be with those people. Be with them less, or find a way to insulate yourself from that bad behavior or risky behavior. I think the last part of being able to grow yourself and protect yourself is, just simple stuff about eating, exercise, sleeping. You need to make sure you get enough to eat and you get the right food, you're sleeping enough, and you're exercising. These things are important because you'll need the energy to do the things that you want to do. Time is one of our most precious commodities. If you eat right, sleep right, exercise, you'll have the energy to make the most of your time. The last part about not needs versus wants, I think it's easy to explain if you think about it in terms of delayed gratification. If you're able to put off what you want right now because you have a bigger goal in the future, I think that's really a long-term behavior towards success. I think it's a really long-term behavior towards growing yourself. If you want to exercise, sure, it may be painful now, but it'll get easier in the future. If you want to get an advanced degree, yes, it's a lot of hard work, but if you keep at it, you can get the credits that you need, pass the tests that you need to pass, write the papers that you need to write in order to get that advanced degree, right? That delayed gratification. So I think those things are all really important in terms of growing yourself and loving yourself. The last part is doing something to make the world more joyful, or doing something to bring joy to the world. That's really a big goal, and it's really kind of nebulous, but I think it's doable. You think about little things that you could do to bring joy to the world, and I'm sure that you could think of something that you could do to even bring a little bit of joy even to the people that are closest to you. Now, I use the word joy on purpose because I think if you pick any other word, you're going to get into a cost-benefit analysis. If you choose satisfaction, or if you choose health, or you choose wealth, any of those things, you're going to get into a cost-benefit analysis about how many good things you're going to do towards working towards that goal versus what is the bad or side effects of any decisions that you make. But if you think about joy, to me, joy is more just a spontaneous emotion. It's a sense, a feeling that just overwhelms us and comes through us. And I think by choosing joy, you're really getting to the basic, really, fundamental human feelings. And I think this is doing something to bring joy to the world is about giving back. It's about doing something to make the world around you better, to give back to the people that are around you. And I think if you do it, even do really small things, I think you'll find it really fulfilling. I'm not going to go through and make specific suggestions because to some people those suggestions might seem trite. To other people that may seem like great ideas. But, think about things that you could do, even small things. Even the people that are closest to you. What could you do to give a little bit of joy, add a little bit of joy to their everyday lives? I'm sure you could think of something. I want to revisit those 3 cues or 3 shorthands that I had. The work hard, be nice and smile, and how those relate to being independent and being able to support yourself, being able to love yourself, and then also doing something to bring joy to the world. So the first one, work hard. I think if you just say work hard, people are going to start to do things to create a more independent life. They're going to start to do things. They're going to start to live on their own. I think they're going to do they're going to do the stuff that they need to do in order to be independent. Now, as your kids grow up, they're not always going to make the best choices, and that's okay. Because everybody's got to learn as they grow up and learn how to do things better, learn how to do things in a way that makes sense for them, learn how to do things in a way that makes sense for the world that they're living in, because the world changes too. So if you just say work hard, I think you'll end up getting to that place where you're living independently. The second part is be nice. Well, what does that have to do with loving yourself? Well, I think if you love yourself, you're going to be free. You can live your life more intentionally. If you're free and you can live your life more intentionally, I think what you'll find happens is that you have more time to listen to other people and really listen to their stories. And I think if you're able to really listen to people, take them for where they're at, and help them to go where they want to go, that's That's the core of being nice. So I think if you love yourself, you're going to be able to be generous. You're going to be able to display gratitude in a way that other people that don't love themselves are not able to. So if you don't love yourself, the advice of be nice, I think, is good advice. It's sort of in the spirit of fake it until you make it. If you don't love yourself, but you're sort of able to fake being nice, I think you'll start to get in that sense of groove of gratitude, and I think you'll start to get in that sense of being able to listen to other people and help other people. That last part about smile, things that you can do something to bring joy to the world. I think smiling is at the heart of it. Like I said before, joy is a spontaneous emotion. Smiling is kind of spontaneous too. Even if you force a smile, kind of doesn't work, but if you really have a natural and genuine smile and you look at somebody else with that smile, they're going to smile back at you. Try it. You just can't help it. You smile at somebody, they're going to smile back at you. It works. So I think that's why that, in a nutshell, smile equates to doing something to bring joy to the world. So those 3 cues, or those 3 in a nutshell pieces of advice or goals, would be work hard, be nice, and smile. So if you're watching this and you've gotten this far, you might be thinking, well, gosh, there's a bunch of stuff missing here. And if you think there's something missing, you're probably on one of 2 sides. On one side, you may think you should be telling your kids to go out and achieve great and big and ambitious goals, and that's missing. Or you could be on the other side and say, hey, you have no values, right? That's what's really important, is being able to equip our kids with values so they're able to navigate the world. So here's my response to both of those. The first is the big goals part. Well, doing something to bring joy to the world, I think, actually is a really huge and gigantic goal, but it's not a goal in terms of, making your way in the world, making a lot of money, or being responsible for a large organization, or other things that we might typically associate with success. And I think it's important not to lay out what we think those expectations are in terms of big goals or achieving success. And there's 2 reasons for that. And I think first, like I mentioned in the beginning, if you're a kid, you're looking up to your parents, trying to reach the same level of your parents can almost seem insurmountable as you're a kid. As you grow older, you get closer and closer to being able to be more of an adult and sort of figure out what you want to do. But if you're a parent and you're saying, go out and do big things, I think as a kid, to your kids, it can be overwhelming, because they're just trying to be like you, and then on top of that you say, and not only do you have to be as good, if not better than me, but you have to do these great and amazing things too. The second part, and I think this is more relatable, is that when you say go and do big and amazing things, it's going to immediately come from the parent's perspective. It's going to immediately come with the context of the parent. And so when the kid hears from their parent do great and amazing things, they're going to interpret that as, what does my mom or dad want me to do that's great or amazing? And they're not necessarily going to interpret it as, what do I want to do that's great or amazing? Look, the world that our kids grow up in is going to be different than the world that we grew up in. And so in order for kids to navigate the world and do great and amazing stuff, they're going to have to do great and amazing stuff in their own context. They're going to have to bring their own set of ideas about what problems need to be solved and how to solve those problems. So I think if you say do great and amazing things, it's probably going to backfire a lot more than it's probably going to backfire. I just say it that way. On the other side, if you think about values, what values do you want to equip your kids with so they do a really good job and they're successful in life? I think if you write down an explicit set of values, that's not necessarily a bad exercise, but in a family context, it's really hard to do that. Can you imagine your family coming together and figuring out what values were important to them? Writing it down, spending hours sort of working through it? Not a lot of people do that. And I think it's because we all have different ideas about what's important, and as a family unit, we kind of come together and sort of have our own cohesive set of values, but it's really hard to communicate that and figure out what they are. So apart from the frustration and the tension that comes from just trying to be explicit about your values, I think the second problem is the context that you're communicating those values in. The kids may have their own idea of what's important to them, And how are you supposed to give them their voice to articulate what their values are? And even if they have the wrong set of values, how do you help them go on a path where they can grow and learn to sort of correct their own set of ideas about what's important and what's not? I mean, as you're growing up and as you become an adult, first you might just start thinking about yourself. What do I want? Later on, you may be thinking about just your group of friends, your peers, what's important in my peer group. And later on, you may start thinking about what's important in the world. And as you go through those stages of development, I'm sure your set of values and your set of principles are going to change. So as parents, if you try to equip your kids with a set of values, they may have no idea what you're talking about because they're coming from a completely different perspective, from a self-centered perspective, from a peer group perspective, and then maybe from some different, bigger perspective. So equipping your kids with values can be tough. I think though if you go through what I laid out as expectations, one of them was be nice. That's sort of a set of values. To me, it's more about internalizing it and as actions of self-love. But, being nice could also be interpreted as a value too. So I guess I'm not against values. I just think it's really hard to do. I think it's really hard to do correctly, and I think it's really hard to take a set of values and grow them with your kiddos because your kiddos' perspective is going to change over time. So maybe a more accurate way of saying it is I'm sort of values light. So if you're a parent, how do you actually put this stuff in action? Well, I think the first part about being independent or living independently is hard enough on its own. Basically, with kids, if you wanted them to be independent, you'd have to start that train of independence early. For example, if your kid's taking piano lessons and they don't want to practice, then you need to sit down with them and explain the consequences and try to create a feedback loop for them. That feedback loop may be daily, it may be weekly, it may be monthly, but they need to know how they're doing and how their decision to practice or not practice is leading to a specific outcome. Now, if your kid decides to give up on piano and they don't really like it, then, that's something as a family you have to figure out how hard you want to push it. But that's an example of how do you create independence. And it's the same thing with homework. You can help your kids with math homework, but if you have to keep following up with them in order to do it, at some point it's going to break down. When they go to college or when they go and get a job, you're not going to be chasing them around anymore. So they're going to need to figure out how to do this time management themselves. They're going to need to figure out when to ask for help, and they're going to need to figure out when to ask for more time. So raising independent children and letting them sort of go off on their own and be independent is probably the best thing you can do to help them live on their own and be independent later. And it's super hard to do because we all hate to see our kids fail, but that's exactly what's going to have to happen if your kids are going to learn how to structure their lives on their own and figure things out so they can be successful. If your kid's sort of like a daydreamer and, sort of loses track of time, then, maybe they need to show up to all their meetings 10 or 20 minutes early to make sure they don't get lost on the way. They're going to have to learn those lessons. They're going to have to experience the pain from being late and being embarrassed if they're going to make a real change in their life. This is different than some people think. Some people think, no, independence isn't the way to do things. What you're going to do is just sort of rote teach kids how to do things, give them the structure, and you don't want them to be independent. You actually want them to be autonomous, right? So yes, do these 15 problems of math homework. You have 45 minutes. See how many you've done. Okay, go to the next one. And, giving your kids those set of skills and teaching them how to do it in a particular way isn't necessarily a bad thing. And for many years, you'll get a lot of great outcomes out of it. But ultimately, there has to come a leaping off point where your kids jump into independence from being autonomous. And that leaping off point, the further and further you push it, is going to get harder and harder to do. If you micromanage your kids, which is a little bit of an exaggeration, but for the sake of emphasis, if you micromanage your kids up until the age of 6, and then you let them start to be more and more independent, that's a smaller jumping off point. On the other hand, if you micromanage your kids up to the age of 15, and then you expect them to be independent, that's a much bigger leap. And I think it's a much harder transition, both for the kiddo and also for the parents too. Next, how do you teach somebody to love themselves, right? It can be really tough. I think it starts with mindfulness. You have to understand the emotions that you're feeling, right? And it has to be okay to be able to express those emotions. So if you're a parent and your kid's crying or your kid's angry, you wouldn't say stop crying or stop being angry, right? You would want to say something like, how are you feeling? Try to get them to label their feelings, and then try to get them to take some action where they can let those emotions run their course, so they can go back to taking more positive steps in your life. So if the kid's throwing a big tantrum, a lot of times kids get to that point where they're throwing a tantrum and you just have to let them go. They have to finish off that tantrum. Sometimes, though, you can see a tantrum coming and you can head it off. A little positive advice, or a little encouragement, or probably most importantly, a little bit of expectation setting, so you lower the bar a little bit. The kid can't slide down the big hill because it's too steep. You say, okay, let's do it a quarter of the way and slide down a little bit. Okay, let's go a little higher, let's go a little higher, and eventually you're sliding down the whole hill. Whereas if you said, nope, you got to slide down the whole hill, there's no other way, do it if you want, otherwise we'll just go home, and your kid throws a temper tantrum, it kind of, you missed an opportunity to have a dialogue with them and get them to have a more constructive way about experiencing their emotions and being able to ratchet that up a little bit, experience the fear a little bit, let it dissipate, experience the fear a little bit, let it dissipate, experience the fear a little bit, and let it dissipate, to have those opportunities to do those things. I think as your kid gets older, it's going to be more interesting, right, trying to help them to set boundaries, right, especially boundaries on behaviors that are bad. Because as kids become teenagers, they're going to have this huge, peer influence, and they're going to want to do things that make them seem cool or make them seem in the in crowd for their peers, right? And so, what can you do to give them the courage and strength so that they can set boundaries? And I think you have to have lots of conversations with them about what are good behaviors and what are not good behaviors. And that means you have to have open communication. If your kid's not able or not willing to talk to you about their friends, and they're not able to talk to you about things that are going on, it's going to be tough. So if your kiddo is not able to talk to you or doesn't want to talk to you, it may not be your fault as a parent. It just may be the way that their brain is wired. You may have to find other coaches, other mentors that they could talk to in a more free and open way so they can have more positive examples in your life. I think if I was to sum it up in a nutshell, the best way to say this is our kids, from an emotional point, are going to become the people that mentor and coach them. As parents, right, we have this huge role in mentoring and coaching our kids and showing them how to experience emotions. But as parents, sometimes we aren't the only answer. Sometimes you need other coaches and mentors too that your kiddos can look up to. It takes a village to raise a kid. Also, when it comes to loving yourself, this delayed gratification or identifying your wants versus your needs, I think parents have a huge role there. They can constantly talk about, whether they should eat the ice cream now or later, have the lollipop now or later, being able to have self-regulation, right? You can have one marshmallow now, or if you wait until after dinner, you can have 2 marshmallows, right? Those are great things that parents can do that sort of do that auto-regulation, but also parents can set great examples. If parents are exercising, sleeping well, eating well, I think those are going to be great examples that carry on to their kids, so their kids have enough energy and their kids are able to start to make better decisions. When they start to get stressed out, they may start thinking back to when they were kids, what made them feel comfortable, what do their parents do when they're stressed out, and if they can go back to that mental model of sleeping well, eating well, exercising, delayed gratification, they're probably going to have better choices. And so that's a great thing that parents can do, is coaching and also modeling, delayed gratification, identifying needs and acting on needs over wants. Doing something that brings joy to the world is one of the best parts of being a parent, because you get to make your kids happy through little acts all the time. You can bake cookies with them, you can spend time with them and listen to their stories. You can, physically play with them and tickle them, right? These are all great things that you can do, bring joy to your kiddos. And I think those are great examples. But another thing is, as a parent, you can show that kindness and generosity to other people in the world, to your friends, to neighbors, to people that you interact with. Your kiddos are always watching, and so if they see you being kind and generous, then they're going to learn how to be kind and generous too. Also, keep in mind that your kids go through a development process of their own. They don't start as fully formed adults. When the time they reach age 18, they still got a lot of brain development to go through and a lot of social development to go through. And at those early phases of adulthood, they may have a more self-sovereign point of view. They may care more about the things that matter towards them, and they may care more about their own peer group. They may not be nice and kind to people that are outside of their peer group. I think as kids growing up, it's a great opportunity to talk to them about kids outside of their peer group and how they're treated and how they would want to be treated, and what you can do, right, as a family, right, to bring joy to the world, do something that can add value to people's lives. I think those are great opportunities to have those discussions, but also just take those actions. And at the end of the day, I would say, just do what you think is right. So what's the point of all this? I think as parents, it's really important to set expectations. Talk to your kids about what their lives as an adult should be. And when you're doing this, you're not trying to be prescriptive about what their lives should look like. What you're trying to do is give them a ladder that they can climb, where they can go achieve something, and then look for the next goal and achieve it, and look for the next goal and achieve it, and look for the next goal and achieve it. So they keep going. The reality of life is that you're going to try a lot of stuff, you're going to fail, and then you're going to feel awful, you're going to get up and you're going to try again, or you're going to reframe your goal to go and reach it, and then you're successful. And then when you're successful, something happens, you're not really happy with your success. You're going to go and look for the next thing to go do, and it's going to keep going. So in that's what you really want your kids to be able to see, that process of going through it and not giving up, not having a failure to launch, right? You want them to continue to engage in the world, engage with life, engage with themselves. And that's why I think it's really important to set these expectations and let them become their own independent people, which I think is what we really want as parents.